Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. It's June, so that means it's Pride Month, and what better way for a reader to celebrate Pride Month than to read books that celebrate everything LGBTQI+. I'm going to be doing that this month, and I hope you follow me for the journey, because we have to celebrate everything that's diverse, everything that celebrates who we are. The first book I've read this month is this one. It's called Intoxicating Mr Lavelle. I found this a really good book, and I just want to read more books that celebrate diversity, and I want to get into more LGBTQI+ fiction. Before I move on to the plot, I forgot to mention that this book is authored by Neil Blackmore. And it's the first book I've read by Neil Blackmore, and I found it a great read, so I'm going to try to source more books by him. So I just want to read more that he's written. I just love his writing style, and I love the way the plot's formed, and I love the way the story moves forward. It's a really great book, and I do recommend this one. So let's go on with the plot. So the plot's basically about two brothers, Edgar and Benjamin. They've lived a very sheltered life. Their parents are quite wealthy. They live in England. Their father owns a big business, and for their whole lives have been schooled at home. And this is set in 1763 or thereabouts, so it's historic as well. From the beginning, we know that Benjamin thinks of himself as different. He always has, and he does already know that he fancies boys. He doesn't like girls at all. But in 1763 in England, you could be killed for that. You could be hanged, or you could be burnt alive. So he's very fearful. If the truth comes out, what would happen to him? Also, the scandal that it would cause on his family. And reading through this book, it just is shocking that this sort of thing happened in the past. We're living in, 2022 now, and that wouldn't happen in our society, at least in my society where I live. So to read that in a novel, being a historic novel, you get a sense of what it was like for people back then, and it really makes you think. So anyway, as these boys grow up into young men, they've never really left the house. They've never had friends, never had people over to visit. Everything is about their home. They're secluded so strongly and so completely that they really know nothing about the outside world except for what they've read in books. And they read a lot of books, and their mother encourages them to read, but that's all they know. Out of the blue, their parents decide that it's time for them to go on the Grand Tour. So if you don't know what the Grand Tour is, it's basically a period in a young person's life in England. If they're wealthy or certain parts of society, they go on this tour of Europe to the big cities and centres in Europe, like Paris and Rome, Milan, all those type of things, to soak up the culture, to make connections, to set themselves up for life, they think. That's what it's about, the Grand Tour. So off Edgar and Benjamin go onto the Grand Tour. Their mother makes them promise to look after each other while they're on the Grand Tour. But it's not as easy as it sounds. So Benjamin just wants something different. He wants to be a bit daring, but Edgar doesn't. Edgar's very straight-laced. He wants to make his parents proud. He wants to make the connections. He wants to meet a wife. He wants to rejoin the family business when he gets back home. Benjamin doesn't want to do any of that. He wants to be free from the family. And Benjamin happens upon Mr Lavelle. Now, Lavelle is a few years older, about 4 years older, I think, in the book. And he's very exciting. He's very loud, very brash. He doesn't bend to, the conventions of society. He will say what he thinks. He will argue points that don't make sense to other people. He's so different from everything Benjamin's experienced, and that makes it so intoxicating for Benjamin. And Mr Lavelle is also described as being very good looking, being a model in modern times. Benjamin is attracted to him as well physically. But it's not just a physical attraction that's so strong, it's the whole persona of Lavelle that Benjamin falls in love with, and he does fall in love with Lavelle. They have a relationship as the book develops, but then the bond between the two brothers, Edgar and Benjamin, starts to divide, starts to split. So they're both going their separate ways as they make their way on this Grand Tour journey. Edgar feels that split, and he's most upset about it. He wants that brother connection to be back. He thinks that Benjamin's, on a path to destruction. And at this stage, Edgar doesn't know what Benjamin's up to. If he did, it'd be such a scandal that it might just kill the family. Who knows? In those times, of course, even in cities of Europe, it was frowned upon, and in certain cities of Europe, he could still be put to death, Benjamin and Lavelle, if they were caught. But there's also another secret that the boys find out about their mother when they're on tour, early on when they're in Paris. What they find out is their mother is from Jewish heritage. And in England and many parts of Europe at that time, Jewish people were hated, they were driven out, they were reviled, and if people found out that they had part Jewish heritage in their family, people would hate them in society, and that's how bigoted people were back at the day. It's a very difficult subject matter, really, to read when you read things like that in a novel, even though it's historic and they've got to fit the times. I mean, the author wants to make it as realistic as possible, but it does make it a challenging read, and it does make you wonder what people were really like back in those times. Further in the plot, some things do happen. I won't say what happens because it drives big twists in the novel and big events that happen later on and also towards the end. I'll just say that some secrets are found out, some people are hurt. There are some big shocking things that happen in this novel, and it's worth the read just to get to those points. This is such a good book. It's so well written. The characters are so good. The settings are so complete. I felt like I was transported back there. Even though parts of this novel are still lighthearted, especially the parts with Lavelle and Benjamin, they're lighthearted because they're young and they're in love, and those parts have to be lighthearted because they're happy at that time. There are certain parts that aren't so lighthearted and aren't so lovely, and that's what makes this novel all the more real. I'll talk about Benjamin and Edgar together. They are brothers, and they both have that sheltered upbringing that really is shown in this book, because when they're in certain situations in the novel, they don't know how to behave. So they don't know how to behave in society amongst people. They can't read body language very well of other people. They can't read other people's tones very well when they speak to them. They're a bit naive in all those things in society that other children would learn growing up if you're socialised with people growing up. That comes across so strongly in this novel, and it's so clear that they're like fish out of water, that they're not ready to be put out in society, especially on this grand tour. Edgar thinks that he is. Edgar thinks that he knows everything, that people are as genuine and kind to everybody. He really believes that. And when people mistreat him, he doesn't know what's going on. He can't read the signs. Benjamin's a bit different, even though they're just both naive in certain things. I think Benjamin's a bit quicker to pick up the cues that other people give them in the way they talk to them and their body language and things like that. I'm not sure why that would be. I'm not sure why Benjamin would be quicker to pick that up and Edgar wouldn't be, because they both seem to be as clever as one another. Benjamin also carries his secret with him, and that affects him as well. So he carries a lot of weight, and you can see that when he comes across Lavelle, it's almost like some of that weight lifts. He finds a kindred spirit, and you feel that in this novel as well. You feel his happiness when he's around Lavelle. Even though Lavelle's a bit of a terror, a bit of a devil, you just feel that Benjamin's very happy, and that is the key reason why the bond between their brothers breaks a bit, fractures, is because I think Benjamin's happiness is something else that Edgar really can't unravel. He really can't get his head around. Lavelle comes across as a very dangerous character. He manipulates people very well, gets under their skin, knows how to push their buttons, how to draw them to him or to push them away. He has that from his past. So in this book, we learn that from his age about 10, 11 to around 18, he was taken in off the streets by someone who was wealthy, him and other boys. But then they were forced to perform favours for other men. So he was abused as a child, and that creates his character in the present timeline. And even though he's brash and he's loud and he thinks of himself as being so special and so fun and so intoxicating, underneath he's a very sad character, and you get that along the storyline. And the author doesn't make a big deal of the fact that this character is sad, but it's underneath. It's like an underlying current through this story. And that makes you understand the character's motivations a bit more. But it doesn't excuse them. So it doesn't excuse the fact that he does things sometimes that are damaging to people. but you can understand his psychology a bit better once we understand his past. This book has a lot of things going on. So it's historic, it's dramatic, there's adventure, there's a bit of action, there's a love story, there's passion. There's so many things in this novel, and there's a bit of campness as well, a bit of fun and levity through certain parts of this novel. There's also tragedy, and there's also a lot of sadness and very deep, complex characters. A lot of things going on in this novel. And it's not a long novel, it's about 300 and so pages, so not a very long read. It won't take you long to get through it, but I do recommend it. I rate this a 4 out of 5. I would read another book by the same author, and I'm going to try to find some. I think this is a special book. If you want to see more videos about books that celebrate everything LGBTQI+, check out my channel and subscribe. More books will be available during June, and I'll be making a point to read a lot more in the future.